On the surface, the Russian war machine is operating at a scale unseen in decades, but beneath that raw output, the economic engine is fracturing. Before we break down the data behind this hidden collapse, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. In 2025 alone, intelligence estimates show that Russian factories produced a staggering 7 million artillery rounds to feed the front line. Out on the battlefield, the military is consuming between 10,000 and 15,000 of those shells every single day. To pay for this massive material output, Moscow relies heavily on global oil markets. When the conflict in Iran drove up global prices, Russia secured a 60% year-over-year revenue bump in July 2026. That injection of foreign currency allows the government to pour roughly $238 billion, about 40% of the entire federal budget, directly into defense. Russia projects the image of a fully mobilized, infinitely funded state capable of outlasting any adversary. Yet a closer look at the state's internal finances reveals severe structural stress. This table from the Russian federal budget shows a quiet but significant reduction. Planned military expenditure for the 2026 budget was slashed to 14.9 trillion rubles, a drop of about 1 trillion rubles from the previous year. Simultaneously, the Russian finance minister has pressured the cabinet to freeze trillions of rubles in civilian spending just to keep the government solvent. If weapons production is peaking and oil revenues are surging, the underlying economic foundation should be stable. The fact that it is cracking suggests the current level of spending has reached a critical limit. In industrial warfare, survival is dictated by a strict mathematical equation. Production plus imports must be greater than or equal to consumption. Russia's vulnerability lies in the sheer size of its consumption variable, specifically the consumption of human life. Since the invasion began, the Russian military has suffered roughly 1.4 million total casualties. Of those, researchers estimate that as many as 450,000 are deaths. For years, the state masked the financial impact of these losses by shifting expenses off the public books and draining their national wealth fund. This chart tracks the rapid depletion of that emergency reserve, falling from 6.5% of GDP at the start of the war to just 1.8% by early 2026. Without that cushion, the government burned through its 12-month deficit limit in exactly 90 days. The state has largely exhausted its primary fiscal buffer. As liquid reserves dwindle, the government is losing the flexibility to absorb the mounting deficits of a long-term war of attrition. Ukraine lacks the industrial mass to match Russia shell for shell, so they are using distance to attack the production side of the equation directly. Through heavy investment in domestic manufacturing, Ukraine now fields 1.3 strike drones for every Russian drone. They are using that numerical advantage to prosecute a deep strike campaign, flying drones up to 1,500 miles into Russian territory to systematically dismantle refineries and ammunition depots. Ukraine operates under immense strain, carrying a 122. The unusually small generation born in the 1990s is entering their prime working years, exactly as the massive post-World War II generation enters retirement. When you combine that pre-existing labor gap with the mass emigration of educated young professionals and the loss of 1.4 million men to battlefield casualties, the workforce hollows out. Factories require skilled machinists. A catastrophic labor shortage breaks the manufacturing sector from the inside, neutralizing the benefit of high oil prices. By 2026, these individual crises have locked together. The wealth fund is depleted, the workforce is shrinking, and manufacturing GDP growth has contracted to just 0.6%. As these industrial and labor constraints converge, the Kremlin faces a narrowing set of options to sustain the current intensity of the war without risking further systemic domestic failure. Pushed against this ceiling, Russian leadership is being forced to pivot toward cheaper, hybrid warfare tactics as their primary tool for escalation. The image of an infinite juggernaut is being replaced by a more fragile reality. Russia is maintaining its current tempo by consuming its future sovereign wealth and its own domestic labor pool, assets it cannot easily replace. The data suggests that the state's capacity to absorb these losses is reaching its limit. Let us know in the comments how much longer you think the Russian economy can endure this strain, and thank you for watching.